So this one is The Daily Rogers by, again, a screwy name, Nonymos. Shortened version of Anonymous. Thanks for that, guys. So this is a college AU, no powers universe story. It is Skinny Steve, little, asthmatic, sickly, Skinny Steve. And we have all the usuals. Bucky's in this one. Bucky is a Romanian born exchange student whose father is American, and he comes to America to go to college. Dad is not so much in the scene because Dad is a homophobic prick. So, no George for Bucky. Steve is still his prickly little pissy self. Steve is the social warrior that everybody makes him out to be. Natasha is Steve's friend, has been since freshman year, and tries to keep Steve out of trouble. That is a very tall order, and Natasha is not a Russian assassin in this one. So she has a little bit harder time in this particular setup. It has several Tumblr type posts in it because the Daily Rogers is a Tumblr blog, and it started in Steve's freshman year because Steve is so scrappy and so opinionated and voicing those opinions. People started posting blogs about what he'd done, what he'd said, what shirt he was wearing today that, screamed about this particular political thing or that particular political thing. Who he decked, who he got decked by, just goes on and on. This is their junior year. Bucky is a junior. He sees Steve the first time in a coffee shop. It's a Starbucks. He's used to Romanian Starbucks or coffee shops in general, where you sit down at a table, somebody comes over, takes your order, goes, makes it, brings it to you. He's assuming cafe style, not Starbucks. And he's in a Starbucks. So he's sitting there and sitting there and sitting there and sitting there. And somebody comes in and he's like, okay, I'll just watch and see what they do. And Steve instantly realizes what's going on. And he pretty much yells at everybody in the entire Starbucks for being assholes and not helping this foreign exchange student with understanding what's going on. So he screams at everybody, and Bucky does not like being the center of attention. So Steve's yelling at everybody, but everybody's looking at Bucky instead of Steve because this is who he's talking about. This doesn't sit well with Bucky, so Bucky yells right back, leaves, and that is the first Steve and Bucky of the story. Right out of the gate, they're arguing because Steve is a scrappy little fuck. Bucky, it takes quite a while for Steve and Bucky to actually interact past that coffee shop scene. Eventually, you realize that Sam is an awesome person. Sam has brought Bucky into his circle of friends just merely on the fact that they share a room together. And, sorry, my hair is all frizzy and it's driving me bonkers today. That circle of friends includes Clint and Bruce and Tony. Um, it's college, hormones and everything. She has put Bruce and Clint together without actually putting them together. They're pining after each other. I hate watching myself in this thing because I can see that my hair is in a million different places. Anyways, so that's kind of some angst that's going on is Bruce and Clint not quite making the move to get to the other one. Tony is with Pepper. Natasha isn't with anybody to start with, but you find out Sam has a crush on Natasha. And Natasha is his Russian tutor. So, yeah. Eventually that gets to be something. So the first bit, it's a bunch of Tumblr posts about what Steve is doing right now. And it's funny. And if the person that the Tumblr was about agreed with it and had okayed it, it would be something to chuckle and laugh at. But it's not. Steve never okayed it. Doesn't know who owns the blog, who you do find out towards the end. Schmack. Stupid people. Anyways, it's when we as people start something like this, we don't mean it to be mean, usually. I would never mean it to be mean. It's just something to say, oh my God, did you know this happened? And it's not necessarily gossip. It is, but it's not how we want it to come across. We just want to share our reaction with other people. Kind of like me doing these videos. I want to share my reaction and thoughts about these stories that I've read with you guys. So I'm doing these. So this is my version of this Daily Rogers. But I'm okay with it because I'm the one doing it. If somebody was posting what I talked to them about, these different stories, that would be a whole different story. But I'm the one doing it, so it's okay. So this is kind of that. The next time Steve and Bucky meet, massive torrential downpour rain. Bucky is stuck hiding under her awning, trying to figure out if he can make a mad dash for his class and get there without looking like a drowned rat. It's not going to happen. But Steve's walking by with an umbrella. Now, I'm 5'2". I live in a world where most people's average height is close to 6 feet tall. When a tall person does something for me, I don't take it as an insult because I know that there are some things that they're just better suited to do. Like carrying an umbrella. If my husband and I go anywhere, my husband is 6'5", I'm 5'2". There's a massive height difference between us. Yes, we have gotten all the short jokes, short relationship, tall jokes. We've gotten them all. Every version, clean and not, of those jokes. So if we go somewhere, and we rarely do, but if we go somewhere and we're using an umbrella, my husband holds it because my husband is tall. And if I try and hold it over his head, I'm going to end up poking him in the eye with one of the tips. So he just carries the umbrella. Not that I can't. It just makes more sense for him to do this. Bucky tries to point this out to Steve. And Steve does not take it as it's more logical for Bucky to carry it so that Bucky isn't getting poked in the eye with the metal tip. He takes it as, I'm not good enough to do this because I'm small or sickly or whatever's running through Steve's little tiny short sickly brain. So this results in fight number 2. There are many. The next time they see each other, Sorry, my screen just tried to go to sleep. The next time they see each other is Bucky has decided to take a on-campus job. And his options are pretty much pour coffee at Starbucks, or be a model for the life class. I'm drawing a blank on the name of the class. Where you sit naked and everybody draws you. Bucky decides he can do this. And it's more money than being a barista. So the first class, the teacher puts him, and the teacher is Peggy Carter. The first class he goes to, she puts him with the juniors, which she doesn't realize is going to include Steve Rogers. And the look on Steve's face when he sees Bucky realizes that this is a safe place for Steve. This is not a place he needs to intrude on. So after the first class, he asks Peggy to transfer him to another class, that he can do the freshman or something. It'll be fine. Just because he wants to give Steve a place to escape all the crap outside on the college from the Daily Rogers. So it works out, although it kind of hurts Steve's feeling because he thinks it's Steve again. Brain, not necessarily logical. So he kind of takes it the wrong way until Bucky explains it, but that's much later in the story. Then we have a party at Bruce's frat house. Now, Bruce, in a fraternity, is a geek fraternity, so it's okay. And there we find Pepper, and we find Jane. Thor is in here somewhere, and so is Loki. Loki. Yeah, Loki. We'll get there in a minute. So, Bucky hasn't really come out to any of his new friends that he's gay, or even bisexual. So he kind of gets up the nerve enough to dance with a guy at the party. And it's Remy LeBeau, who is my favorite X-Men. It's a southern accent. I like it. It's one of my favorite. Up there with English, Irish, and Scottish. Though Scottish, I've gotten so used to it, I don't even recognize it anymore. Because one of my best friends is from Scotland, has lived in Canada and the States for the last 15, 20 years. But he still has a really strong accent. But I've gotten so used to hearing it from talking to him all the time that it's kind of slipped on my list. So, but Southern is still one of the best. And my favorite version of Remy LeBeau is the version played in the X-Men, and I can never remember which one it is, where Logan loses his memories. That Remy LeBeau. And supposedly they're making a TV show and they're using Channing Tatum as Remy LeBeau. This is wrong. You're not Remy. I will hold complete judgment until I see it to see if you can pull it off, but I have a feeling I'm not going to enjoy it. So anyways, Bucky is dancing with Remy, and you find out here in a bit that Brock Rumlow is an asshole. He's a douchebag. He's complete fucking prick. Taken out back and beaten to a bloody pulp to realize what it's like. Kind of an asshole. You also find out that Steve and Brock used to be roommates when they were freshmen. And you also find out at some point that Brock is the one who broke Steve's arm. Not falling out of the tree rescuing a cat like the Daily Rogers reported. So Bucky dancing with Remy happens to see Brock pulling and shoving Steve out the door and he loses them trying to get from Dancing with Remy to the front door where they've gone. And he listens for him and he hears them, and what he hears is Steve getting beat up by Rumlow again. He doesn't know it's again until he starts listening, and some of the things he hears is that this is not the first time Brock has beat up Steve. And he kind of stumbles over calling out Steve's name like he's been trying to find Steve, and that he's shit-faced and has no clue what's going on, which plays for him because he ends up getting to headbutt Brock into the middle of next week, and they get the hell out of there. And in the fight, the key phrase for Steve, the one and only "I can do this all day," is spoken. Steve, Steve, Steve. No, you can't. Okay, you can, but you really shouldn't. And Nonymos kind of sneaks in a little bit of, she sneaks in a bit. So they're going back to, Bucky gets Steve away from Rumlow, and they're talking about their dorms. And Bucky is in Winter dorm, and Steve is in Lehigh dorm. So she sneaks that in a little bit. And I say she. I will always probably say she unless I know otherwise. So, anyways. They get back to Bucky's dorm because it's closer than Lehigh. And getting Steve cleaned up from getting his ass kicked again, Steve falls asleep on Bucky's bed. So he's there in the morning. Nobody knows where Steve or Bucky has gone from the party. Nobody saw them leave. Natasha is pretty much frantic, assuming that Steve is dead in a ditch somewhere because it's Steve. So they wake up to a crap load of texts and Sam standing over them going, "Oh my God, everybody's downstairs. You have to get your asses down there before they call out the National Guard." They get downstairs, and sometime during the night, Clint has lost his hearing aids. He took them out during the party because it was just too loud, too much background noise and everything. So he's taken them out, and somehow he's lost them. And his roommate, which is Loki, has locked him out of the room. He can't find his keys, and the roommate isn't answering or isn't in there. And you find out he's completely deaf without his hearing aids, and he won't talk to anybody because he can't stand not hearing himself talk. It would drive me insane. So I can understand the mentality behind not talking if you can't hear yourself. I don't like talking if I have a head cold. But they can't get him, he won't text either. That he won't answer any texts. Well, they find out, Steve comes down with Bucky, and they realize he's deaf. Steve starts talking to him because Steve knows sign language. And in all this, so he's, giving the group information on what's going on. Hey, the key's missing. He can't find his hearing aids. He can't get in. He's miserable because he doesn't want to talk and not hear himself. All this little bit. And they're like, well, he won't text either. Well, Clint tells Steve that he's dyslexic. He can't read the texts. Which leads to Tony going, "Oh my God, you're a pain in my ass. There's a font for that." And I am mildly dyslexic too. I screw up my P's, B's, and D's, all lower cases. When I'm writing, I do it all the time. And I tried that font, and it did not help. It made everything worse, so I took it off. So I hope it works for people who are actually totally dyslexic instead of my just mental fuck up with P's, B's, and D's. And occasionally G's. Anyways. You will find if you ever look at my stuff, it's all uppercase letters. All of my notes are printed in full uppercase. I don't lowercase anything. There's a reason for that. I screw up the letters less. Anyways, my screen keeps going to sleep and I don't know why. So they get Clint squared away, and in the meantime, while Steve is talking to Clint, Natasha has come in, or she was already there. No, she comes in. She wasn't there. She comes in, sees that Steve is not dead in a ditch somewhere. She tries to yell at Bucky, but when Bucky tells her what was going on, she lays off. Also, he gets a date with Natasha for Sam because they're talking in Romanian. She's a language student. Linguistics student. There we go. So they're speaking in Romanian, so nobody else can understand what's going on. They're the only two that speak the language. So Sam's getting pissed because Bucky's sitting there in his eyes hitting on his crush. It's not. He's getting you a date, so shut up and take it. So, yeah. And then a few days later, Steve and Bucky have an actual conversation. They sit down and have coffee, have a full conversation. And Steve finds out a little bit about Bucky's family, that his dad's American and doesn't want a gay son. And that his mom is Romanian, lives in Romania, got remarried, and then Bucky came here for school. So, and it works out. They actually have a conversation without an argument. And Bucky finds out that Phil is Steve's roommate, and that he's even a fanboy here, where it's just Steve's moxie that he's fanboying over, not everything else. And she kind of sneaks in the whole trading card kind of scenario. If they existed, he'd hoard them, and Steve's like, yeah, probably. So that's kind of a cute little slip in. And if you remember Lorraine, Private Lorraine, from the first Captain America, that horrible kiss that Peggy walked in on. Yeah, Private Lorraine can't keep her fucking lips off Steve Rogers, even when he's a little tiny Steve Rogers. Tumblr strikes again for this, and it is, kiss Steve Rogers, he's Irish. And it starts out with a post of Clint anonymously saying, hey, Steve Rogers knows sign language, isn't that cool? And the Daily Rogers comes back with, this is what you bring me? Steve Rogers knows sign language? Come on. Coulson pops up. He's an art major. And Gabe Jones, one of the Howling Commandos, pops up with, he's Irish, or of Irish descent, I think. And then it comes, kiss Steve Rogers, he's Irish. And then it sounds like a challenge to me. So Lorraine takes up the challenge. But she doesn't walk up and say, hey, can I kiss you for this? Hey, can I do this? Hey, can I? May I? She doesn't ask. She just goes, you're Steve Rogers. And he turns around and she kisses him. Bucky's standing there. And this pisses Bucky off because she's just accosted him. She's sexually assaulted Steve Rogers in front of him. This is not going to work. So Bucky calls her a very naughty name in Romanian, and it's a word that if it gets used in my house, my husband gets slapped. It's the one word in my house that doesn't get used. And it's the one word I hate to see written in anything. I hate the word cunt. It's one of those words I just can't stand. And he uses Romanian version for it, which is a very pretty word to look at in Romanian, but I know what it means, so it's still an irritating word. So anyways, he calls her a naughty name, goes after her, and walks up to her and says, "Hey, kiss me." She's like, "What? No." And Darcy, who is the one that originally showed Bucky around campus, is there. And she's like, "Hey, handsies, hands off. I've got a taser." So Darcy's taser comes in. And he's just pressing Lorraine, saying, "Hey, give me a kiss. Maybe I'll show you a good time after. Hey, badgering her. But he's not actually touching her yet. He's just trying to point out what she's done compared to what he's trying to show her. And all the girls that Lorraine was walking with are getting pissed because here's this guy trying to force, except he's not. He's not even going to touch her. He just wants her to get the point. And he finally tells them all, "Hey, I'm asking you if I can kiss you. You didn't even ask, Steve. You just walked up and did it." And then all the other girls understand. And then they're giving her the dirty looks instead of Bucky. So it works. But this leads to another argument between Steve and Bucky. Because Steve would have much preferred to let it go. And Bucky points out his martyr complex, which Steve Rogers in any and in all universes has. There's nothing else you can do about it. Steve Rogers is a fucking living martyr. Can't talk, sorry. So, ends up into another argument, and Steve and Bucky don't see each other for 3 days. And Bucky is in a shitty, horrible, bad mood because he knows he did the right thing, pointing out that they were pushing Steve to do things that he didn't want to do, or even if he did want to do, they didn't ask if he could. So he's upset that it all ended up on Tumblr again, but he's not upset that what he did, because what he did was right. So he has a thing of being horrible at laundry, and Sam has weaseled something out of him so that he has to do Sam's laundry on a Friday night. So Bucky goes downstairs to do the laundry in the basement, and there's Steve Rogers apologizing for being a dick. This is something that does not happen in the story very often. Steve doesn't apologize. Usually because Steve's right. But whatever. So the apology leads to conversations, which leads to a kiss, which leads to a blowjob in the laundry room, which leads to them being walked in on by Loki, which leads to something else later. You kind of catch the first part of Bucky being a sub, and not over physical domination, because this version of Steve can't physically overpower Bucky. It's all mental and implied domination. But he doesn't tell Steve this because it's something that other boyfriends have not reacted well to, so Bucky keeps it to himself until almost the end. And then you find... Oh, sorry if that made noise. There was grease on my computer. So... all of this is something that Bucky ends up having to tell Steve, because Steve realizes that every time they have sex, it's just Bucky getting Steve off in various ways. Hand job, blow job, whatever. None of it's actual reciprocating sex. And most of the time, Bucky won't let Steve finish him, whatever way it's going to go. So he finally has to tell him, because Steve thinks that Bucky is just pitying him and doing this because he doesn't think Steve can get laid some other way. So Bucky finally has to break down and say, no, I have to have domination of some kind. Which works for Steve. because Steve is a dominant. And he does like doing that, but most people don't consider him a dominant because he is small. Little people can be dominant too, assholes. Alright, I'm not one of them. I just don't have that personality. Not my take. So anyways, we get through all of that little bit, and it finally comes out that Tony is the one that owns the Daily Rogers. Some bad stuff gets put up on the Daily Rogers. Crossbones being an asshole. After he gets his ass kicked by Natasha. Puts up that Steve has AIDS, which scares the crap out of Bucky. Not that he thinks Steve is going to get him sick, because he knows that Steve doesn't have that. He would have said, because he's that kind of a person. But now he's afraid that maybe he has something that he'll give to Steve, and Steve will get sicker than he already is. So he gets checked out, and in all of this, trying to get the post pulled down, it ends up everybody finding out that Tony is the one that created the blog. And Tony tells everybody, look, it was just a social experiment of me trying to understand people, to be able to relate to people better. And it just snowballed and got away from me, and everybody was having fun with it. I didn't really think about it from Steve's point of view, because he didn't really know Steve. I mean, it was just somebody he saw on campus. They didn't run in the same circles until Bucky started blending the circles together. So Loki comes in on this because Loki is the guy that hacks into the Tumblr to start with for Crossbones to lock it up so that Tony can't take down the AIDS post. He comes in and gives a little extra help. And Tony gets it all back and tears down the entire Tumblr. It's gone. All of the posts are gone. And I don't know how Tumblr works if you tear down the main Tumblr page, if all the subsequent posts you've liked and reblogged and everything, if those will go away or not. I don't know how that works. I've never run across it yet, but I've only really been using Tumblr for like 6 months, so I have no clue. And I don't want to find out, because all the blogs that I follow I really like, and I would hate to see any of them go away, because if I don't like them, I just unfollow them. You put crap on my posts, on my feed, I'll don't follow you. It's that simple. Anyways, so eventually it gets taken down, and everybody kind of, not necessarily forgives Tony, but they kind of understand that it is something that Tony would do. It's a overblown thing, because this is college Tony. It's not 45-year-old Tony who's got some life experience behind him. It's still college age Tony. But I think he's actually college age, not brilliant genius, college graduating at 17 Tony. So it gets all taken down, and Steve and Bucky decide that they're supposed to be together and that this is the way it's going to be. And you don't get the senior year. I kind of want senior year, even without the Daily Rogers Tumblr posts. I just want senior year because I want some more fun with them. And I want to see where they go with the whole sub-dom thing. That would be fun. So maybe Nonymos, if you love us all, you would give us senior year? Maybe, please? Besides, your writing style's cool. So, more. So that is this. And at 34 minutes and 33 seconds, I will cut off. The next story, and I said something about it last time and I didn't do it, but the next story I'm doing is Second Time Around. It is a TJ Steve story, so I will be doing that one. I have to go reread it and write some notes I don't have notes on this one yet. So, I will see you all next time. Talk to you later. And by the way, comments, please. Nobody's commenting. I don't know if you're watching or not, or if I'm just clicking away, giving myself clicks. I'm not, but I click once to make sure everything loaded right. So anyways, comments, please, thumbs up, all that stuff that you're supposed to do that I thought everybody knew they were supposed to do and nobody's doing. So go do this for me. Thank you. Bye.